3. Really excited to learn a little bit more about Discover College Soccer. We've been sort of going back and forth and really have enjoyed your interviews and your emphasis on recruiting and sort of the recruiting dynamics that coaches deal with. And so really, really excited to have you on board.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And as a former D3 player, I love what you're doing as well, and giving some shine to those fantastic D3 programs out here. I live in Florida now, which is weird because there's not a single D3 program down
None,
here.
none, zero.
Yeah.
Hey, why don't you, what's your background? How did you, and ultimately, how did you get to where you're at, and why did you decide to start Discover College Soccer?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. It's funny. I I started coaching when I was still a college player and helping with high school teams and then coaching club. And then I actually went and got I played D3 at Catholic University of America, who made the Sweet 16 this year, the farthest they've ever been in the tournament. So that was awesome. But, you know, I ended up going to grad school for an MBA and a master's in sports administration. And my first job out of grad school was coaching at a Division II college. And it's weird. I've had kind of two career paths in my life: soccer jobs, and then running and working for trade associations. And I just keep like doing this back and forth. So over the
Zigzagging through life is the only way to
yeah,
go, as far as I'm
yeah,
concerned.
pretty much. So coaching college was great. I worked a bunch of different camps, D1, D2, D3. All the different different camps, and then did my own, and then I actually ran as the executive director of Arlington Soccer Association in Northern Virginia, which is it's a stellar club these days. Probably 5,000 kids playing there or more. Well, at least that's what it was when I was there, which was 10 plus years ago. So I'm sure it's bigger, but bigger now. Um, and then ended up down here in Bradenton, Florida, because I got a job as the program manager for soccer at IMG Academy.
Oh yeah.
And so that position really pushed me to, was helping do the day to day in terms of all the different teams and making sure campers, were doing what they need to do, and working with all the leagues and just all that stuff. And then also at the time we had the U17 national residency there. So coordinating stuff with them. And then a lot of my job was to get teams to try to use the facilities, because if you've ever been down there, those facilities are just amazing, and they've only gotten
Yeah.
better over the years. So I worked a
Top
lot with the
notch.
MLS,
Top notch.
teams coming
Yeah.
in for preseason and foreign teams. We actually had Brentford in back in 2014, 2015 timeframe, before they they were in the Premier League,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so it was nice to see their rise, and so I've had a lot of exposure. And these days, I've got two kids playing club soccer, and my daughter's just this is her freshman year of high school, and so it got to be um, this past spring, and I'm on the board of the club, and folks were asking about what college information we could give kids. And we actually have some really good resources in terms of coaches, some ex-college coaches at our club, which was great. Um, but the one thing I kept noticing was that there's just a gap in knowledge. I mean,
Mhm.
we had parents asking the question, "Oh, so if this D3 school does really well, they'll get promoted to D2, right?" And it's like, no, that's not how the NCAA works. That's how your league works, but that's not
Yeah.
how the NCAA works. So, I just saw kind of a gap in
Mhm.
knowledge and what we were providing as a club, and so I was trying to help fill that. But the other thing was, we've got, you know, we're probably a medium-sized club, and we've got some really good players, but we're not MLS Next, we're not
Right.
ECNL. So,
Right. Right.
there's opportunities there for those kids to play in college, but they may not play at Florida State, USF, UCF, that kind of stuff. But I know that there's so many opportunities out there, but a lot of these folks just aren't exposed. If you
Yeah.
haven't been around it, you're just not exposed to it. So I thought,
Yeah.
okay, well, predominantly with Division I, Division II, if you can't talk to a coach before June 15th of your junior year, if you start your process then for those schools, you might be too late if
Yeah,
that's when you're
yeah,
starting.
yeah.
So really, how are you supposed to learn about a coach or a school or a program besides just clicking around a website? So I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna email guys to see if they'll sit down and talk to me, or email
Hmm.
coaches and see, and especially like the D3 and NAI programs.
Hmm.
There's so many out there that folks have never heard of and they don't exist. That's kind of where I was as a D2 coach. I mean, I had to sell my program
Hmm.
24/7 to try to
Yeah,
get recruits. So I know there's programs out there who would love extra exposure and
yeah,
to
yeah.
be heard and seen by folks. I was like, you know what, I'm just going to start this podcast and see what happens. And it was an overwhelming response. Well, I think my 100th episode will get launched tomorrow, actually.
Mm,
Uh, and so, and I've got a whole bunch more, ready to go that'll be coming out, and it's all over the place. It's men's, it's women's, it's JUCO through D1,
mhm,
NAI, all of them, right? And just to hear straight from the horse's mouth,
mhm,
and we cover the recruiting side of things, because I think again that's where the biggest knowledge gap is with a lot of folks out there, and also learn about a school, learn about how a coach coaches his team, learn about
mhm,
what other staff are there, what kind of academic stuff is out there, and they're fairly short episodes, 20 to 30 minutes. We try to make them digestible, but still long enough to where you're getting some good information to know, hey,
mhm.
this is a school I want to learn more about, or I've heard enough and it's time to move on
Yeah,
to the
yeah.
next one, whatever the case may be. But it's been really enjoyable, and you know, and it's fun because I've reconnected with some folks that I knew in the past, and I've gotten to talk to the Catholic University men's and women's coaches.
Mhm,
So reconnecting with my alma mater has been fun,
mhm.
and seeing some of the schools doing well in the tournament, at all
Yeah,
levels right now. So it's been nice.
yeah. This is a question that I just thought of that I didn't tell you about.
I'm all for it. Go for it.
Um, do you notice similarities? Like, are there similar approaches to recruiting in general in college, or does everybody have their sort of own flavor, their own approach to doing it, which is leads to that gap in knowledge? Because listen, simple player number one, unsuccessful in trying to get recruited, and I thought I knew. And then simple player number two, it's difficult, and now I realize like I don't know. And as much as I'm involved at Division 3, I still don't understand.
Yeah, I think there are definitely, it's a strange answer, but yes, there are a lot of similarities, and then there's the folks who will immediately on the call that I'm talking to will say we do it a bit differently, and it's like, okay, well, maybe you think you're doing it differently, but really
Yeah, yeah,
you're a lot like other people. But um, so you get a little bit of both. I mean, I've you know Division 1, especially, let's just call the top half of Division 1. They're recruiting nationally. They have bigger budgets, so they can go to all the
Mhm.
events, and folks are they're getting inundated with emails, right? And
Yeah,
and
yeah,
so it's hard to sift through everything, and they're they're in the game of eliminating
guys,
uh,
yeah,
potential recruits, right? Whereas a lot of D2, D3, NAI, junior college, they're the opposite, right? They're trying to build their lists by
yeah,
getting out and going to stuff. And so, I mean, it can be different. Um, and then you'll have folks that say, okay, well, I know that I'm gonna zig when everybody's zagging, right? Everybody's
hmm,
going to ECNL events and MLS Next events, so I'm gonna go to the the RL events, the ECNL
hmm,
RL, or I'm gonna go to this local regional tournaments that not everybody's going to go to, because I'm going to
hmm,
try to find the diamonds in the rough, or
yeah, yeah,
folks that I can compete with. Uh, those approaches, I think, some similar, some different, but the big similarities are, you know, what they all want to see in an email. They hate the cookie cutter blast of, you're blasting 1,000 coaches, dear first
hmm.
name, kind of, you know, you congrats on your great season. It's like, I was 1 in 18. Don't say that. You know what I mean? Like, people just not doing any research.
Yeah.
And
Or
they
go
all hate.
Gophers at the end, and they're the
Yeah, yeah. You
the
forgot to
Falcons.
delete.
Oh, sorry.
You forgot to delete your cut and paste. And and again, if you're talking to a program where they're looking for reasons to whittle their numbers down,
Numbers.
that's easy. It's like, you
Yeah.
didn't take the time. I'm not taking the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's those little things that I think make a difference. And but it's hard, right? It's an inexact science, and if there's no other thing that exemplifies that, it's the numbers that are currently in the transfer portal.
Yeah.
Um, so it is an interesting time. I mean, it's way different from when I was trying to play 25 years ago, where I had a book that I had to write down and write and mail a letter.
Yeah.
I didn't have a highlight tape. No games were recorded.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
and it's just a different animal. Whereas now the bare minimum is you better have some good highlight film. You
Yeah.
better be intelligent. You better be able to communicate and go back and forth. And no other time or grades more important.
Yeah.
Because the athletic money, that's the other big misconception, I think, is everybody thinks there's all this money out there that
Mm.
all these schools have, and it's generally not the case. Most schools, you're going to get way more academic aid than you are athletic aid.
Athletic aid. I always say that, like, two things just based on your comments. One, I think it's a lot harder now just because of you're dealing with volumes, right? Whereas back in our day, guys were dealing with a list of, I'm just making up numbers, but to give you perspective, like they had a list of, 30 kids that were on their target list and they're hoping to get 10. And now they're still looking to get 10, but they might have a list of like 300 players that are just zooming in and out. So, you know, to them, it's like you said, you don't write the right email or you copy and paste and you say go Gophers and they're the pioneers, right? Like that sort of thing. They're like, you're out because you know what? I got 7 other guys who are exactly like you, and I'll take either one of those. Um, um, so yeah, so in that regard, I think that's a lot harder. That's why it's a lot harder today. I forget my other point, but yeah.
Yeah.
That's the toughest thing these days. These kids have to deal with.
Well, for sure. And then, like you said, and it's just numbers, right?
Yeah,
And the other issue is, what is it that you're really looking for? Like
yeah,
a lot of these schools have roster quotas.
yeah,
The school is telling them, we want you to have 40 guys or gals on this roster.
yeah.
And the coach may not want that because he knows that bottom 10 won't
We'll
ever see
never
the
play.
field,
Yeah,
but he's got to get them. And he or she may have 9 scholarships to try to fill
yeah,
out a 40-person roster.
yeah,
So those people aren't getting any money. They're
yeah,
not, and you're not playing. And then all of a sudden they're going into they're like, well, this was terrible. Well,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
so
yeah,
so doing your research is
yeah,
really important, and defining, you know, your right fit. And I mean, you and I are on a lot of the same, Twitter
yeah,
follower threads and all these
yeah,
things, and you see the whole the D1 or bust mentality, and the other
yeah,
folks talking
yeah,
about the right fit. But it's important. It's if you know if you think, I know I'm the 39th person on this roster, but I'm going to break through and you know
yeah,
make it. You might, but again, those are the exceptions, usually not the rules.
yeah,
Um, because people do develop late, and I've got my interview with coach from Rockhurst was great because he really talks about, he's a big believer in letting folks develop,
yeah,
and wanting that, but he also has a JV side and
yeah,
huge roster numbers, and you got to be okay with that. And some
yeah,
kids are, and some kids aren't, and
yeah,
it's just
yeah,
about deciding what is important to you
yeah.
as a player.
Forget who I was talking to. Similar. It's like, there are players for whatever reason they have it in their head that it's Division 1, and they're okay whatever the result is so long as they she calls them their Instagram moment. They have that Instagram moment and they're okay with it. She goes, she did say though that the flip side is that the reality is that a lot of those kids either drop out, not drop out of school, but drop out of soccer, or that's why, and largely driven by COVID, but the transfer portal is now, she thinks, is a permanent part of the recruiting process going forward, because kids are realizing, why am I going to hang around, be number 39 on the roster, do everything everybody else does, but never get a chance to play, when I could go to a smaller school and play every game, or right, and maybe enjoy my college experience a little bit more.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
and because of that, you've got just huge, it's harder for uh, an incoming freshman, right? You're the person
Mhm.
graduating high school, because used to be you were just competing against all the other high school seniors,
Yeah, yeah,
but now you're competing with other people who are already there, and it's more of a shuffling of the deck chairs, right?
yeah,
And then you looked at the new numbers of how many internationals are coming into
yeah,
play, and
yeah,
in the men's side, it's almost a quarter now, I
yeah,
think,
yeah,
and on, it's not as high on the women's, but it's still a big number. So you're competing against a
yeah,
lot of people now,
yeah,
and you got to stand out, and you got, the coaches are trying to find who's going to be a difference maker
yeah.
each time, and
Yep.
so it is difficult, but I've heard also from coaches, kind of like you said, they want the Instagram moment, and maybe they're ready to move on, or a lot of them will just stop playing.
Yeah, yeah,
I'll stay at X Division 1 school and just not
yeah,
be an athlete,
and
which is
not,
fine,
yeah,
which is great. And
yeah, yeah,
there's other kids they're finding in their recruiting where if they don't get that D1 offer, again, they're choosing just to go to a bigger school and be an athlete, not be an
yeah,
athlete, and not continue to play soccer
yeah,
at a lower division, um, which that's their prerogative. Everybody's
yeah,
different. You got to find what's best for you, and that's the key. And I think that's I'm guessing folks just aren't doing enough upfront soul searching in
yeah,
terms of what is important to you in a college experience,
yeah.
and what are the things that you want your school
Hmm.
to be. Do you want it rural or city? Do you want big or
Yeah,
small? Do you want this
yeah.
major or that major? And all those things, and those are really important to look at.
I, I, I will say, and I don't know, like, I do think that what you're talking about requires players, when you think about from the soccer perspective, to be really honest with themselves. And I think that's hard for lot of kids, and I think it's because whatever, big fish little pond, they've always been told how great they are. I mean, you can rattle off the list, right? Everybody knows that list, but I think that's part of the issue, is that it requires a real honest assessment of you as a player. Especially if you're thinking, oh, I'm going to go to, I'm a female soccer player, I'm going to go to UNC and I'm going to be a starter. Yeah, good luck with that. You know,
Right,
so,
right. Well, if you're on a national team, a youth national team, maybe you will. But
maybe you, yeah, 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 exactly. Like, oh, okay, I'm not a national team player. I didn't even make ODP, but I'm going to start. Okay,
yeah,
good luck.
and I really, really resonate with that, because that was kind of the position I was in,
Hmm.
25 years ago. I was choosing between a Division 1 school where I was, I had that preferred walk-on status. I wasn't
Hmm.
recruited. Maybe I,
Preferred
uh,
walk on. I
yeah,
love that
yeah,
term. Like,
yeah,
oh,
exactly.
that's glorious.
Well, it's one of those where, well, the good thing is with that, they get you into the class scheduling thing, so you're not scheduled
Yeah,
classes during practice
yeah,
time.
yeah,
But again, I would have been that 39th guy, right?
yeah.
Or I could go to this D3, which had an academic program I really liked, was in a
Hmm.
location I really liked, was a smaller school atmosphere, and I was pretty confident I could play.
Hmm.
And so I decided to go that route, and I
Yeah,
wouldn't change it for
yeah,
anything. Had an amazing
yeah.
experience, got a great education, because I specifically chose a big city because I wanted internship opportunities,
Mm-hmm.
which I had amazing internship opportunities during school,
Mm-hmm.
and it ended up being fantastic. And you know, but somebody else is going to want a different thing, and that's
Yeah.
perfectly okay. But just try to figure out what it is you want and own it, and follow through with finding that right fit. I think it's just it it, it leads to just a better result in the end for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
I always say, like, coaches have to worry about, cancers in the locker room, right? Like guys who are, or gals who just aren't mixed in with the culture. And I think that starts at the recruiting process. In the recruiting process, that for whatever reason, kids' expectations are a lot higher than the reality. Again, being honest with themselves, or is at a school where they thought they would go somewhere better, but they ended up there. That I think could be the start of some of that, right? Like, is
hundred
because if they're
percent.
not
Yeah,
if they're not 100% bought in, like you, 100% bought into going to Catholic to play, knowing exactly where you were at and everything, into like, you were probably golden in the locker room. If I went there and I was like, I thought I would be at Virginia or somewhere, and instead I ended up at Catholic, I'd be pissed off, right? And you guys can be beneath me, right? I think, anyhow.
absolutely. And you do. The one thing I've heard from a lot of coaches in my interviews is that you know right now a lot of the recruiting, the technical and soccer stuff, the athleticism, that's just table stakes.
Mm-hmm.
That like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully you find somebody who's got a little bit of special in one of those areas,
Mm-hmm.
but it's the other things. Can I look for someone with a high GPA, because then I don't have to worry about them in
Yeah.
class
Oh,
and
very
monitoring
true.
their school. But
Yeah.
then is this a good person that
Yeah.
is that other people are going to like playing with?
Yeah.
And I've talked to coaches who say when they're recruiting, they talk to the recruits' teammates
Yeah.
because they want to find out, is Jimmy a good guy? Is Susie a
Yeah.
good gal? Like,
Yeah.
and I mean that's great, because I can tell you, I've seen it where you can have addition by subtraction
Yeah.
of a
Yeah.
player
Very true.
because of that, and everybody's, you get rid of that one bad apple, and everybody's game gets better just because
Yep.
that person's not there. And
Yeah.
coaches,
Yeah.
if you're a college coach, man, you you have a short leash, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we've seen already. I think I saw the number was there's like 75 jobs, college soccer jobs open right now
Wow.
on the NCAA website. So not all of those are head coaches, but there's been a lot of coaches who have been moved on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not even a month after the season's ended,
Mhm.
because they didn't get the job done,
Yeah.
and so they got to win, right? I mean, there's some schools who they just like good coaches. You see those guys that have been there for 30, 40 years, um, even if they're not winning league championships, but they keep their job because they're good for the university. They're
Yeah.
good for as a coach, and raising good people,
Yeah.
and developing good folks. But a lot of times, hey, you're sorry, you were 3-10-3 this year.
3-2. Yeah. Yeah.
It's not going to cut it.
Co-
So
Coach Lagana Bly. I don't know if you talked to her. She's McDaniel women's head coach, McDaniel College, University,
yeah,
college, whatever. Um,
I played there, but that was,
yeah.
it had a different name at the time. That was Western
Yeah.
Maryland, I think.
Western Maryland.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Supposedly the field is just outrageous.
Well, the Ravens used to do their preseasons there.
Oh
So
wow.
so what would happen is the Ravens field crew would come
Yeah.
in and take care of the
Fix it
field.
all.
So I remember the first time we ever played there. It was like early in the season, so the Ravens had just left,
Yeah.
but that thing was one of the most immaculate
Yeah.
pieces of grass fields
Yeah.
you'd seen in that area of the
Yeah.
country.
Yeah. Yeah. So, no, but she was saying, but yes, the field I watch on video and I'm like, I'd like to play there. If I dyed my beard a little bit, maybe I could reapply. Um, she said she had an experience early on in her coaching career, and she told the teams, like, you don't understand, like, my success or failure here allows me, or won't allow me to pay my mortgage. And I originally thought, yeah, that's might be a little bit. You're Division three, right? And I think after a while, I'm like, yeah, no way. They're hell. Like it's amazing to me how far the game has come. Where there's an expectation on these coaches, not only wins and losses, right? Like, hey, how's your team managed? How, like, are they good kids? Are you recruiting good kids or bad kids? Are they always the ones in the dean's office after a weekend because they spent, they, you know, trashed a house because they were all hammered, right? That's the sort of thing that they ultimately get. So I totally get when a coach is like, not only do I have to find the right players, like you said, it's almost table stakes. Now it's like, am I finding the right person? Because if I don't find the right person, I can't pay my mortgage.
Well, and like you said, it's the little things.
Yeah,
So if in the middle of the recruiting process you're not being responsive to the coach,
yeah,
okay, well, does that mean he's not going to be responsive when his professor asks
yeah,
him for homework? If
yeah,
if you're making mistakes in an email, simple things, and not taking time, well, does that mean they're not going to take the time
yeah,
other places? And again, I think there's misconceptions out there where coach is going to show up to the Jefferson Cup and just be mindlessly wandering fields looking at soccer and going, "Oh, that's a great player." And 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 then, like, that happens, you know,
nah,
so rare. Like, what happens is the coach knows, okay, here are the 5 games I'm going to, right?
yeah,
Now, if there's a gap in the schedule, they might plop down on a field where they don't know anybody and
yeah,
take a look. But it just really doesn't happen. Now, if they're looking at, Johnny on team A playing team B, they might see some kids on team B
yeah,
and charge out, okay, that, they're going to be exposed, but it's not, you got to do the work
yeah,
to be seen and to make those connections. And the biggest thing I've seen now is the use of camps. I
yeah,
mean, the ID camp thing is huge. And in fact, I was looking, and I know there's a couple D1 ID camps this weekend,
hmm,
Thanksgiving
yeah.
Saturday and Sunday, and
Saw
and
one for Division three the other day. I
uh,
forget where it was. I
yeah,
went to.
and so every coach I talk to, I ask him about how camps fit in,
Yeah,
and every single one, it's an important thing, and it's like, okay, I'm gonna send you tape, and then you're going to say, okay, let's talk, and then I'm going to come watch you play, and then it's okay, well, let's get you in on campus and come to this ID camp because I want to see how you mix in against other
yeah,
players. I want
yeah,
to see you get exposed to the school. I can kind of
yeah,
show you around, and it's an important part of the
yeah,
process that wasn't there a long time ago, right? I mean, it's
yeah,
just really been, and some of them unfortunately are really expensive, and they're going to bring
yeah,
in a boatload of kids. But honestly, a lot of the coaches I've talked to, they say, hey, we try to keep it to 40 kids so that it's, 2 or 3 teams are
yeah,
playing, and it's really manageable, and we get really one-on-one
yeah,
time. And so, and these are all questions you as a recruit have to ask, right? If I
yeah,
come to this camp, how many people are going to be there? What other coaches are
yeah,
going to be there? And
yeah.
so it's,
I think I actually thought for a while, and it's always going to end up being somewhere in the middle, right? Where I think a lot of coaches are like their main decision point is the camp, and if you can't get to the camp, for it's a demonstration of your real interest, right? So it's a different story if you're in California and the camp's in New Jersey. Don't get me wrong, I think that's legit, but if you can't get to a camp that's 3 hours away, like you gotta that's a signal, right? Like,
sure.
well, you should, right? But I also think like a lot of coaches, I think most of the camps that we've been to, my experience with my sons, you're right. I think the legitimate ones are 30, 40 guys. Cost is manageable. They feed you, they do all that stuff. And those are legit. The ones that you sometimes see, these are camps, it's unlimited, they've got like those tend to be a little bit more ridiculous in my book. But for the most of the coaches that use ID camps, those I think you're right, are totally critical to the recruiting process.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked to a lot of coaches who work at the Future 500 camps or the
Yeah.
Exact ID camps, and those are the ones that are for-profit entities that are
Yeah.
kind of expensive, but you will have college coaches there. It so the question is, is it the colleges you want to see or you're trying to get in front of? If not, really try to see what their camp schedules are and get in front of there. So one of the things we have right now at discovercollegesoccer.com is a camp listings. So
Yeah.
as I reach out to all these college coaches, I'm telling them, hey, put your camp information up on our website so kids can search it. I've got a search
Hmm.
function there so you can
Yeah.
see based on date and all that stuff when camps are. So now, unfortunately, I don't have the time to scour every single college's website to pull camp information down.
What?
I
Come
know, right?
on, man.
I know. But I'm relying on the coaching staffs to
Yeah.
just put the links up
Yeah.
themselves. But I'm
Yeah.
giving them a nice, easy form to do it. So I'm gonna and next week, actually, I'm gonna hammer all the coaches out there to try to
Mhm.
put up their camp info, and we keep that up to date as much as we can, as much as the coaches
Mhm.
will update it for us. But so if you're ever looking for camps, it's a good place to start,
Okay.
just to see what's around.
Hey, this has gone longer than I thought, but I do want to talk a little bit about the future. Like, sort of, what do you have? This is awesome, by the way. Don't get me wrong. I could keep talking. Like,
Oh
this is
yeah,
the sort
sure.
of thing that just totally intrigues me. But just because I feel like such a dunce throughout the whole process. Like, I'm so useless. It's not even funny. Like, I can't. Everything I thought I knew, I don't. Right? Like, it's one of those things. But what do you have in store for Discover College Soccer? In the future. I know we've talked about some things that coming in the
Yeah.
new year, but maybe a chance for you to talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, right now, when you go to the website, like I said, we've got the camp listings. I've got a resources page with a couple things on it, couple handy links for people that are, new to the college recruiting process, some things that'll help. And we're going to continue. I'm going to continue doing interviews as much as I possibly can. We release 2 interviews a week. So if you're not subscribed on any of your podcast platforms, subscribe on the YouTube channel. It's in both places, or just go to the website. But we'll keep. I mean, there's almost 3,000 college programs, and based on looking at those job postings, I know a couple of the schools I've interviewed, I'm going to have to interview again because those coaches aren't there anymore.
I
So
shouldn't laugh, but that is
it's just the reality, right? I
yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah.
we're gonna keep, I'm gonna keep pushing for more interviews. So keep on with that. And then I've gotten so many emails and comments and things like just asking for help.
Hmm.
And one thing is, I have no inclination to be a placement service or
Hmm.
recruiting consultant
No,
or anything
yeah,
like that, but um, because I know there's some out there. People always ask, "Well, is NSCA worth it?" Or some
yeah,
of these other
yeah,
recruitings that like and those are big money, you know, uh, commitments. I think what I'm going to try to do is put together some resources that'll, for a really, 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 nominal fee to help people learn the process. Maybe kind of an online course to teach you
yeah,
the process, and then a wealth of resources, templates,
yeah.
checklists, things that'll help guide you, so kind of help you along the way through
Almost
this
like a
process.
self-service. I'm going to give you all
Bingo.
the tools for you to be a self-service.
Exactly.
That's
Because
money to me. I mean, corny, but
yeah,
that to
yeah.
me is sorely needed.
Well,
Sorely needed.
and yeah, so that's what I've got coming out. Where I'm going to be at the United Soccer Coaches Convention in January in Philadelphia. Which is the kind of the largest gathering of college, high school club coaches, and doing some interviews there, and I'm working on putting all that together, and hopefully January is when I'm planning on getting that out to everyone. So stay tuned. But we'll have some free resources available, even if you don't you know join the program,
Mm.
because I just want people to be able to answer questions on their own, do it themselves, not have to worry about paying somebody a bunch of money and
Yeah,
not getting
yeah,
what you need. It but because again, what I find is this this whole process, and with all these coaches. I mean, again, I've talked to over 100 coaches in just the last 6 months. um, it's really just about, like anything, you're going to get out of it what you put into it,
yeah.
and but if you don't know where to
What to put
start
in?
or
Yeah,
what the steps are, it's going to be really hard. So let me help you with what
yeah.
those steps are, and we'll try to try to get you
Yeah.
farther along than you would be without it.
That's awesome. Like I said, that to me, I could have used that with my first guy. Like I was operating on recruiting tactics of the '80s, and that didn't quite work today.
You know what's funny? I actually got a DM the other day, and it's a guy whose niece is a volleyball player, but he's been watching every single interview I've had, and just to learn and translate that into
To
helping his
volleyball.
niece on the volleyball
Yeah.
side.
Oh,
And he's
that's
like,
awesome.
this has just been invaluable. He's like,
Yeah.
what else? I was like, all right, I think we've got the knowledge. We just got to put it in
Yeah.
maybe a different way that'll help
Yeah.
even more people. So it
Yeah.
should be interesting.
That's great. That's great. Hey, listen. Thank you very much. This was fantastic.
Yeah,
Um,
thank you.
and yeah, we'll definitely connect when you're all set to launch the rest. We'll definitely do that. Maybe we could talk about it some more. This is a
Yeah.
subject. It's a sore subject, but it is a subject that I like to discuss because again, to your point about what you put into it. Like the question is, what do you put into it? I don't know what you put into it, right? Like I don't know the. So anyhow, I think it's huge. And if for anyone who's watching who hasn't watched any of the interviews, they are a gold mine of information when you talk about the recruiting process, and even more so with a particular school because they basically chart it out for you as a player what it is they expect and what they're looking for and how to actually get on their short list. So really, Matt, really do appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, thank you, and really appreciate it. Look forward to catching up again, and keep doing what you're doing. Love all the D3 stuff, and
Thank you.
glad you enjoyed your tour of Catholic University, whose field looks immensely better than it did 25 years ago when I had
25
to play
years
on it.
ago.
Yeah, so
Was it in the same spot?
same exact spot. Although the funny thing is that hill was actually a landfill.
Uh
And
huh.
so the preseason every year we'd line up at one end line, arm's length apart,
Uh
and
huh.
just walk it to pick up all of the rocks, concrete,
How
whatever else
awesome is
may
that?
have may have come up through the ground after the summer rains. And now it's this immaculate turf with gorgeous benches and stands and stairs. Oh, it's beautiful. But
I've
yeah,
said this before. Um, Carlini Field, in my book, is a model for every Division III school as to like if you want to your program, you want to show commitment to your program, and not only soccer, right, but lacrosse or whatever. Like that's it because that
yeah,
place is just outstanding, outstanding.
yeah, yeah.
So
That's fantastic. Awesome. Well, hey,
uh,
thanks. Have a great
yeah,
Thanksgiving, and we'll talk soon for sure.
yeah, you too.
All right.
If you like this show, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. You can also find me on anti-social media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thanks. This is a message from my Chief Marketing Officer. I think this keeps him happy.